Greetings, peace and blessings to you, your family, and loved ones. My name is Nana Bakine, and I wanted to do a short, well, I don't know how short it'll be, but I wanted to do a video on Dr. Sebi and his transition and the circumstances surrounding it. I did a little research on the internet, and pretty much the same story is being told over and over again, which I will read to you shortly. And also, what I did as well was to consult the I Ching to see what type of circumstances were going on, what condition his health was in, what status he had in terms of his mind at the time of his incarceration, and all of that good stuff, what his family was about. Now, one of the reasons why I'm doing this video is because I don't really know his family. I don't know anybody in his family. And I think I met Dr. Sebi once, but one of the things that I wanted to address in my video was the fact that people were saying, why didn't his family come forth to speak on the fact that he had been incarcerated, that he had been arrested and then went to a hearing and then was subsequently incarcerated. And I just wanted to express some of my perceptions as to why his family functioned the way that they did, and did not even tell us or let it out that he was had been arrested. So I wanted to talk about that as well. And then I'm going to end this video with some information that I got from the I Ching today. It was very, very interesting information. At first I had a difficult time kind of processing it because I was getting various different sensations and feelings and things around his family and around the guy, Pablo, I believe his name was, that he was traveling with. So, and then also his own health. So there were some indicators around all of that. And I'll try to encapsulate it or make it brief enough that it won't take me all day. I asked a whole lot of questions, and I will post those questions at the end of the video. For those of you who are interested in the I Ching and wondering how you should ask questions and wondering about this situation as well, you can ask these questions, and or you can use these questions to ask about anything else that you may find you have some concern over. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by reading this article that I got. I found this article to be one of the most comprehensive articles that I found in my research on the internet about Dr. Sebi. So I wanted to read this to you. I got this one from a post that was under his picture, and it was on the website, Facebook page. And it starts with Dr. Sebi, August 7th at 6:29 p.m. Story that Latin American news sources are spreading. Can it be trusted? So Dr. Sebi's birth name was Alfredo Darrington Bowman, also known as the world-famous Dr. Sebi, the man who cures cancer and AIDS along with many other diseases, was detained after a flight from California that landed at the Juan Manuel Gávez de Roatan Airport on May 28, 2016, under charges of money laundering. Now, Dr. Sebi and his associate Pablo Medina Gamboa were apprehended carrying a total of $50,000 in cash, $20,000 on Dr. Sebi and $30,000 on Gamboa. They were attempting to board a private plane headed to another location in Honduras. He was detained and then released for a pending court appearance that would later take place on June 3rd, 2016. After his court hearing on June 3rd, 2016, Dr. Sebi was detained under the charges of money laundering by the Public Ministerial. On an unconfirmed date and time between June 3rd and August 6th, Dr. Sebi reported severe health conditions during incarceration related to pneumonia. In critical health condition, he was rushed to St. Vincent's de Antonio Hospital, but died in transit. Before this event, his brother, Garden Bowman, reported that Dr. Sebi had experienced health complications from pneumonia and was prescribed medication by the hospital. His exact conditions of death and any evidence of foul play is still unknown and under investigation. He was received at the hospital by Dr. Edwin Interiano. Dr. Sebi died at 82 and is survived by 17 children. He was an inspiration to many and will be immensely missed by people all over the world who were impacted by his holistic approach to wellness. That concludes the article. And I'll post a link to the article. I'm going to put all of this information in my blog, so I'll post a link to my blog, and so that way you can have the link to the article and various other articles that I found on the internet. Now, this is what I wanted to talk about today in my response to why didn't his family announce his arrest. The first point I wanted to make is maybe they weren't to, this is all speculation on my part, but I think it's important that we kind of look at things a little bit differently rather than just jump into conclusions. And mostly I think if we put ourselves in the position, if it was us or if it was some member of your family or what have you, and these circumstances are definitely suspicious, would you make a big announcement or would you attempt to try to find out something before you made an announcement? So my first comment I wanted to make was, I'm wondering if they maybe wanted to protect him from a shitstorm that would be thrown at him if they let the word out that he was arrested for a second time for money laundering. Now, in many cases, we tend to idolize our leaders on some levels, and we tend to see them as above reproach. And so the fact that he was arrested for money laundering can really have an impact on how people would respond in terms of him being a holistic healer and the work that he's done and his level of integrity. So they may not have wanted to put that out there, and we don't know what the court system's like there in Honduras, so we don't know if he's been detained because he's been charged or had a trial or any of that, so we don't know. Then there's the second thing I wanted to say was, and that is to, I guess, elaborate on what I said in my first comment, and that is that people tend to, especially in the African American community, we seem to have this phobia about, not phobia, but we seem to have this obsession with leaders, and we tend to fall apart when our leaders fall apart or fall off of their pedestals, or if they do something that would appear to be going against their teachings and or their lifestyle or what have you. And Dr. Sebi has already been under a lot of criticism. I've read so many counter complaints and articles and comments about him being a quack and the whole nine. So I'm just wondering if the family may have felt that it would be better to just let things come to a resolve before they disturb or cause devastation in the community that will reverberate through the whole so-called conscious community, these people who are on his diets and taking his remedies and so forth. The next statement I wanted to make was how, in terms of people expecting those people in the conscious community, those people outside of Honduras who are part of the Usha village, to be able to know what exactly to do in terms of the Honduran laws. What exactly are the laws and how do they apply to him? And are those laws, are there laws that say you can only have a certain amount of money in US dollars coming into the country? And if so, how much is that? And whether or not there's anything that can be done, and what happened to the money that they confiscated from him is another question as well. So with all of those, I mean, do they have the right to keep his money that they confiscated from him? What are they doing with it? You know, all of these types of things. We live, well, I'm assuming I'm talking to an American audience, but I'm probably talking to other folks too, because it is the internet. But a lot of the comments are coming from people who have a certain concept around their legal structure, but with no concept of the legal structure or the justice system in Honduras. And we don't know what that is unless we studied Honduran laws. So we don't know. So that's another thing, to blame the family for not telling us anything, when what exactly could we do? You know. My next point is, this is point number 4, is I'm sure that would have been a very wide spectrum of responses from those who admire him. Now, if you're into health and spirituality and all of that, you know that negative energy can also upset your health. Negative thoughts, gossip, people saying things against you, slandering, all of these things can affect you on a psychic level. And this psychic effect can also affect you on a physical level. So if that was your uncle or your grandfather and he was ill and you knew that there were people out there who did not think well of him, would you let it out so that they could send their negative energies over towards him and maybe on some level affect his health to more of a distortion than he already had been in? So maybe they didn't say anything because they wanted to protect him from the naysayers and the backbiters and the slanderers who could affect or have an impact on his health in a very negative way or counterproductive way. Then I move on to say that there's a lot of haters out there. And the fact that people had so many things that were negative to say about him from the beginning. Can you imagine how ironic that he would die of pneumonia, or the complications of pneumonia, when he was the one who was the advocate about mucus being in your body, and that it's the mucus that causes the disease, and getting your body free of mucus would also help you to eradicate various different disorders or diseases in the physical body. So just the ironic part of it all. Now here we will have human beings who, and individuals, I'm saying human beings, so who really admired him, who believed in him. And the irony of it all is, like, one of the most catastrophic diseases that you can get caused by mucus that will take you out of here real quick is pneumonia. So knowing that, what will happen? Will the sales of his products go down? Will it negatively affect his moving forward in terms of the family business being, what am I saying? The family business moving forward? Will people begin to doubt? Will people go into their cabinets and take all of the stuff and throw it out? Will people start making videos about what a fraud he was, that he couldn't even cure himself? It's funny, but that's how people can get, that they are caught up in his teachings to the point where he becomes some type of superstar. And then if he gets ill, then it's like, what about me? And what's going to happen to me now? So I think that may also have been a protective move on their part to protect the business by not putting it out there that he had gotten arrested and then ultimately gotten sick. But when he passed away, well, they had to say something at that point. Now, a lot of people were saying that they saw him and he would look pretty healthy to them. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the hexagrams that I got, but there was some indication that he was having health problems before he was arrested. So I'm not so certain that he was in tip-top shape when he got in there. And it's interesting because some of the same hexagrams that I got for Prince when we did the video on what happened to him came up for Baba as well. And I'm thinking that whatever was bugging him or whatever was disturbing his frequency and keeping him on the right path or keeping him healthy was there for a minute. It had been there for a while. And it could have been that the shock, he went into shock when they put him in prison. According to the reading that I got, he got depressed. He went really down emotionally. I'm sure on some level he even lost a little faith in the process, according to these readings that I got. So when you have a mental disturbance, your mental disturbances will cause you to have physical disturbances. And basically, if he went in there a little bit compromised physically, then prison. And also, the readings were saying that prison wasn't the greatest place in the world at all. But I'll get into that later on when I talk to you about the readings. But I'm just saying that the condition that he was in mentally when he went in, the condition that he was in physically when he went in, and then the condition that he entered, all exacerbated whatever was wrong with him, and came to the point of him coming down with or being sick, and that sickness grew or expanded into affecting his lungs to the point where he had pneumonia. Another thing that I mentioned in my little diatribe about wanting to have some kind of insight into why the family didn't mention it, and that is that this was the second time. Now, the first time that he was arrested or that he was detained, they let him go. They dropped the charges and he was able to go. I don't know how much that was. I don't know. I didn't get any information through my research on that. And research takes so much time. But anyway, I didn't find anything in any of the articles, the many articles that I did read, that stated how much he had before when he was arrested. But I would think that at his age that he would have enough wisdom within himself to follow a course, knowing that he had gotten stopped before, not to do it again. So it's sort of very fishy. And I'm still coming up with other questions that I want to ask about the money and so forth, to see if there was some type of, maybe, he was naive about something or whatever. But I'll talk to you a little bit later about the hexagrams. So anyway, this was his second time. So I don't know how many people knew about the first time that he was arrested. And maybe the family didn't want to tell the world this was his second time that he was arrested. So maybe they just wanted to hope, maybe they were just hoping that everything would work out and he would get out and he would be fine and it would be one of those quote unquote family secrets. You remember that time when you got caught, Baba? You know, kind of thing. Rather than, oh my God, he's arrested again, blah, 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 you know, and the world's coming to an end and all of that. So I think that they probably spoke among themselves or worked it out or decided that it was best to just wait it out and see. And then, of course, once he got ill, what was it going to do then? I'm sure that they were embarrassed that he was in prison. I mean, what does that look like? And I have and others have read about the 50 holistic practitioners who have lost their lives under mysterious circumstances since 2015. And it's about a year ago that they're counting. And I just read an article and she was talking about how she has to add 7 more to the list from all over the world. And I'm certain that that too probably has something to do with why they resisted mentioning it, because they knew that he was targeted on some levels because he was challenging Big Pharma, was challenging the medical establishment, and he was healing people. So it was like, yeah, he's walking around all this time. It's amazing he made it this long, 82, almost 83 years old. He's still upright and he's still doing it and he's still producing his products and he's still distributing them. And now, under a money laundering charge, he ends up in prison. So that's the comment that I wanted to make. And like I said, I was making these comments from the perspective of, if that was my grandfather, or, you know, would I, even though he was famous and all of that, would I want the world to know that my grandfather was in jail? My grandfather, whom a lot of people looked up to, whom a lot of people idolized, whom a lot of people admired, who felt he could do no wrong kind of grandfather. This old man in jail, just the whole idea of it all. You know, would you really want to put that on blast? Put it out there for the whole world to begin their little talk? Because you know how it is. And nowadays with social media, there are so many ways that Twitter and Facebook and all these, Reddit, all these various different commentors. And sometimes the comments are so disgusting and hurtful and ignorant. So I'm pretty sure that they didn't want to. I just feel like they were doing it from a protective place. I don't think they were doing it from a nefarious place. I don't think that they were wise in the way that they handled it from the readings that I got. But I think that they were doing the best that they could within the realm of their experience that they had with among themselves. So I'm going to take a little moment here and shift some things around, and then I will be back with the conclusion of this video, which is a conversation or discussion of the hexagrams that I received. And again, like I said, the information will be in a link that I have at the bottom of this at the bottom of this video. It will be a link to the blog, and the blog will have all of these links in it, because I noticed that YouTube doesn't allow for you to put too many links in your description. So I will just direct you in the description to my blog, and there you will see a playlist of various different videos. There was one video in the playlist that was so heart-wrenching, where he was saying that he had been betrayed by someone in his family or close to him, and that he the person took his computer and all of his information, and he had to start all over again. And I don't think that was too long ago. So that was kind of heart-wrenching to see him in that state of mind. So, he may have been just kind of tired, of struggling and trying to make this thing happen and trying to put this thing back together after such a devastating theft of his materials.
So I trusted those people that work with me, like I always trust everybody. I trust everyone because I live in that world without realizing that in the world that I live in, I live in it by myself. So I'm telling you today that any products that doesn't leave my office, Dr. Sebi, LLC, that product cannot be guaranteed by me because, like I said, they have been compromised. So I'm asking you, my friends, my supporters, that in a few days we begin to produce the authentic Dr. Sebi's product that was produced since 1981. So it compels me to come and let you know that my assistant found it necessary to take the computers and all my products and everything else that goes with it, and I have to start from scratch. All I'm saying to you that I am not responsible for any product that does not leave my office. And this message is needed for you to know because I have been compromised. But I thank you very much. Your brother, your servant, Dr. Sebi.
Okay, so I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to shift gears, and we're going to move on with the readings. The following section will be an explanation of the I Ching readings I received after asking several pertinent questions about the situation surrounding Dr. Sebi's transition into the astral plane. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the questions. I'm not going to read the hexagrams that came with the questions, but I'm going to read the questions one by one so you can have an idea of the process like I mentioned earlier. I'm an educator, so bear with me. I like to teach while I'm expressing myself, so bear with me, and I hope that those of you who do use the I Ching, that this will help you in your process. And feel free again to ask the same questions those of you who do use the I Ching to see what you get. So here are the questions. 1. The nature of the circumstances surrounding his apprehension at the airport in Honduras, May 28, 2016. The nature of the circumstances surrounding his transition. The status of his health at the time of his apprehension. The status of his health at the time of his transition out of his physical form. The status of his state of mind at the time of his apprehension. The status of his state of mind during the time of his incarceration. The status of his state of mind at the time of his transition. Please comment on the report that he died of pneumonia. Please comment on the report that he was arrested for money laundering. How did his imprisonment impact on his health? The nature of the energies that precipitated his arrest. The notion that he was poisoned while in detention in Honduras. Dr. Sebi's state of mind while being held in custody in Honduras. The conduct of the jail staff as it relates to attending to his health. The status of the facility that Dr. Sebi was detained in as it relates to its overall environmental conditions. The most immediate motive his family had for concealing the fact that Dr. Sebi had been imprisoned. The nature of the assistance his family gave him while he was incarcerated. The nature of the assistance his family gave him while he was incarcerated as it relates to addressing his health condition. How did Dr. Sebi view his family's assistance as it relates to his health condition while he was incarcerated? How did Dr. Sebi view the assistance he received from the jail staff as it relates to his health condition while he was incarcerated? The nature of the actual cause of his departure from physicality. Dr. Sebi's integrity as it relates to bringing $37,000 into Honduras. How did Dr. Sebi's air travel from California to Honduras impact on his health? The nature of his family's reaction when they found out he had been detained. The nature of his family's reaction when they discovered he had been made transition. How did Dr. Sebi view his impending transition from physicality? The nature of the conduct Dr. Sebi's traveling companion, I believe his name is Pablo, while in Dr. Sebi's company, his associate's name was Pablo Medina Gamboa. How did Dr. Sebi's traveling companion Pablo contribute to his arrest? I was just wondering, did he have anything to do with it at all? Dr. Sebi's companion's motives for being with Dr. Sebi. The most immediate cause of Dr. Sebi's passing out of physicality. And finally, what does Dr. Sebi want us to know about the cause of his transition? And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump around. So bear with me as I do this, because for me, when I work with the Oracle, I am developing a dialogue. I am developing a process, a procedure, a conversation with the spiritual entities that work through the I Ching. When I do that, I often find that there are correlations between hexagrams. I seldom look at a hexagram straight up without asking for deeper insight into it, because every situation has various different indicators. Each hexagram has various different indicators, and in different situations, those indicators manifest themselves differently. It's the book of changes, so we can't look at anything directly. We can't look at anything without taking into account that there are varying different, indicators, attributes, elements, situations around situations, surrounding situations that are impacting on what's going on. The Oracle can see the whole perspective. The Oracle can look at the whole situation, but we are not often able to do that. So that's why we use the Oracle. But the first thing I want to look at is, well, let me say this. Most of my questions are from having done research and listening to videos, watching videos and reading comments. People made statements about the jail, People made statements about his health. People made statements about the money laundering situation. And there was various different statements that were made that made me want to ask all of these questions so I could cover as many of the bases as possible. All right, like I said, these are the questions that I was asking of the oracle based on various different information that came in. So I want to start with, what does Dr. Sebi want us to know about the cause of his transition? And in doing that, we got the 38th hexagram, lines 4 changing into 41, deeper insight into 3864, changing into 50, deeper insight into decline, which is 41, splitting apart into 33. And what I got from that is that Dr. Sebi was in a state where he was being opposed. The opposition was causing him to go into a decline. This decline precipitated his transition, which is 34, which the transition at the time was part of his destiny. This is the 50th hexagram. Dr. Sebi's opposition, the decline that was coming for him, the opposition and decline were manifesting themselves through the 23rd hexagram, which is splitting apart. This is the competition. So I got this sense from this reading that that Dr. Sebi was not really wanting to get into the market of, I guess, like big pharma, and to compete on that kind of level where he was doing a service to make money, but he was doing a service because he cared about people, and so he retreated. He moved himself out of that realm where he would be in competition, like this 23rd hexagram is indicating. I was concerned about how he felt about being arrested. So I wanted to look at his state of mind at the time of his incarceration. And at the time of his apprehension initially, and at the time of his incarceration, and at the time of his transition. And what I got from that is that this is something that happened to during a time where he was beginning to feel stagnant, 12th hexagram, stagnation. He was beginning to feel like he was stuck in a rut. He was also dealing with some inner conflicts as well as some outer conflicts. And again, the hexagram opposition came up. He was also having a lot of stuff go on in his mind. He was beginning to worry and be very, very concerned. You know, very, very concerned, not quite sure where the concern was coming from at this point, but understanding that he had been apprehended, I'm sure that he began to worry about his supporters and his family. Okay, but this apprehension was his apprehension was part of an opposition to him, and it was also a part of how he had begun to stagnate. And based on the video we saw earlier, or the talk that he gave earlier, we're looking at the fact that he had been compromised on some level. Now, while he was incarcerated, his state of mind, this possession in great measure, was quite interesting to get while he was incarcerated. But as I see it turning into opposition, I can see again that he was not feeling safe. He was not feeling that he would be well taken care of. Now, some of that may have to do with his own naivete that he even ended up in this situation. And with this 20, he's looking back on his life and wondering, what the heck? Back to this, what did I not know? What was it that I should have known? And this 18 is looking at something has been spoiled. So his state of mind, something was spoiling. You know, I asked about his state of mind at the time of his transition. Dr. Sebi had seemed to come to some resolve that he had to subordinate himself to the situation that he was in. However, he was having panic attacks. There was fear that was coming over him, as well as moving himself into a state of oppression or depression. And that environment was probably very depressing and very scary, But Dr. Sebi had a lot of energy, 26. He had a lot of energy coming through him. And looking at the report that he died of pneumonia, looking at the 63, pneumonia is typically what occurs in the physical body after the immune system has taken a serious beating. You don't just get pneumonia overnight. So he must have been sick for some time. And looking at this 63, this was the end of the illness. This was the last, aspect of it. And then this line here talks about the devil. It talks about nefarious energies and having to fight against those, and actually having a major revolution. This revolution coming from his products and healing people, etc. Here we're looking at the people that were working around him. Your army, 7th hexagram, is about the people working around you, the people who are your quote unquote human resources. Unless you're in a war, then it's a different type of thing. But the idea here is that they're supposed to be capable and competent. Obviously, with this 29, they were not. So therefore, the revolution could only take place on a certain level. There was a moderate process taking place. I don't get the impression that it was a major procedure that took place at the point where he was succumbed to pneumonia. That this was had a modifying effect, and eventually the oracle says, "Take not gain or loss to heart." So I'm thinking that that this process right here was just part of what would normally happen to anyone. I shouldn't say anyone, but normally happening would be expected to happen in his situation, and looking at his state of mind and looking at the condition of the environment that he was in. And that's what I wanted to look at as well, was how did the environment that he was in affected his health. And so we asked about the environment, and it was interesting because, let me see where that hexagram is. Environmental. The status of the facility that Dr. Sebi was detained in as it relates to the overall environmental conditions. Here I'm asking the oracle to talk to us about the environment, the situation. What kind of shape was the jail in? And I had read that, you go to jail in Honduras, you're lucky to come out alive. So I wanted to see if there was any truth to that. And it looks at it like initially they definitely wanted to have a very, suitable environment, but gradually it moved into decay. So through that process, they began to make adjustments, and the adjustments were more of, what do you call it? Because this hexagram is joy. So it was more of a band-aid on cancer, like, making it look like there was, providing certain services, maybe through the promotional arena, or talking about it, or in the newspaper or media, making it look like it was better than it was. But it was starting to decay, and this decay has been going on for a while. I wanted to know how his family helped him while he was incarcerated. So I asked the question, the nature of his assistance from his family gave him while he was incarcerated. Again, we get this 42, right? But it goes into decline again. So I'm thinking to myself, this is starting to look like the family were moving sort of within the same frequency that the the environment was in terms of the staff there or the people there that was moving in and out and around him. And we're looking at this 44 again. They began to worry about him, but on some level, they came to the conclusion that this too was a part of his destiny. So on some levels, they were wanting to do whatever it was that they could do, but whatever it was that they could do was in decline. And maybe that had to do with not having all the available herbs that they needed or what have you to take care of him, you see. The nature of his the assistance his family gave him while he was incarcerated as it relates to addressing his health. So I'm looking again, I look at this 47. I know I'm jumping around, but that's how I do when I look at this. And I'm looking at the retreat again and gradual progress. So I'm thinking, we have the well. The well is supposed to be a place where you go. That's the source. That's where you go to get your nourishment and everything. But obviously there was something amiss in this well. There was, it wasn't up to par, and there was something amiss here. And so we have this hexagram 8 trying to hold it together. But now with all of that they're starting to get exhausted, or they're starting to feel the oppression of it all. And here we're looking at these lines 2, 4, and 6 changing into the hexagram 20. Contemplation, looking back on your life to see where you come from, to see where you are, and gradual. And this is interesting, gradual progress, moving into retreat. So I'm wondering, or I'm sensing, I should say, that his health didn't just all of a sudden start to deteriorate. He was having some health conditions, some health issues before he got there. And I want to show you where I got that information from in terms of the where I got that information from in terms of his health. So now we have the status of his health at the time of his transition. Okay, here we go. The nature of the circumstances surrounding his transition, gentle penetration. So whatever was going on, like we saw this with Prince, whatever was going on, it had been going on. It was insidious. It wasn't as observable as one would have imagined. But there was a situation that was going on that was insidious. Okay. And this interesting thing here, we get this 50th hexagram again about it being a part of his destiny. And then we have 64 again, transition. So treading, there was some danger here. So we're looking at gentle penetration, deliverance, his destiny, transitioning out of the physical plane. But there was a treading here, which tells me that there was some danger around his experience at the time, involved with the circumstances surrounding his transition. Now here, I asked the status of his health at the time of his apprehension. And I'm getting the 10th hexagram. Oh, I'm mixing stuff up. The 10th hexagram, danger, right here. And then we have transition again. So we're looking here, we have the nature of the circumstances surrounding his transition. We get 57. Then we look deeper into that. We get deliverance into his destiny. Now we're looking at the status of his health. We get treading, which means that he wasn't optimum. For all of you guys out there saying he was in optimum health, he was not. In fact, he was kind of skidding on thin ice with this 10th hexagram. Okay, now he may have had some difficulty on the airlines getting in, traveling back and forth, who knows, but he was in a difficult situation, a dangerous situation. Okay, there was some difficulties or risks. This 10th hexagram is about taking risks. Now, in light of the risks, is something about naivete here with this 4th hexagram. Then you got progress. Then we're looking at deeper insight into this 64, the transition. Look at this, 64 splitting apart and back into 64 again. So I'm going to step out there and say that according to this reading, Dr. Sebi was not healthy or not in optimum health. And I read that a lot, that people were saying that he was in optimum health at the time that he did. Does this look like a guy who is sick? And I guess we might just have to admit that he was a guy who was ill at the time that he was arrested. Now, the status of his health at the time of his transition out of the physical form, 24, Dr. Sebi was to return. He was about to return back to the astral plane from which he had come. Okay. It also says that this is a situation that came up before. When you get 24, it means you've been here, done that. So he was in this kind of situation before where he was facing death. Okay. He was facing death before. And now this part here, holding together, when we're looking at the family, trying to hold it together, trying to keep everything, trying to keep everything above board, or I guess I want to say trying to just keep everybody in an emotional state where everybody can be calm and peaceful, or just kind of do what they need to do, knowing that he was the instructor and he taught them how to administer, how to take care of people when they come down with certain illnesses. Okay. But it was his time, from what I'm looking at this reading here, deliverance. Deliverance says you have to deliver yourself. So, and 14, possession in great measure. He had plenty of talents, plenty of abilities. Just look at this abundance. Just so much going on with him. But at the time of his transition, it was time for him to just kind of make it out of here and go to the next level. Looking at his state of mind during the time of his incarceration, I wanted to know how he was feeling when he was apprehended, how he was feeling when he was incarcerated, and where was his head when he was about to make transition. And here we're seeing stagnation. So Dr. Sebi knew something that he wasn't telling anyone, or he told people, but because we got 29 up in here, so somebody was hiding something. Okay, so we have the stagnation and we got the treading again. So Dr. Sebi, something was going on in his head. And we all know how when you think a certain way, when you feel a certain way, that you affect your health. There was some conflict going on in his head. And this conflictual energy was getting him to be really nervous and apprehensive and all of that. And then the opposition. And when the opposition could have been the people around him and or his own thinking that was causing him to get to the point where he became ill. When he was incarcerated, possession in great measure. Well, we could look at the money that he had, but then we have opposition. So whatever he had with himself, all of the talents and so forth that he had coming forth through him, there was complete opposition to that. Very apparent opposition to his abilities and talents. And I'm not so sure if Dr. Sebi was aware of how, maybe he was just a little naive about the work that he was doing and how there was an opposing force to what he was doing. And this may come from this 18th hexagram is decay, and this has to do with the going back into your ancestral line. And maybe there was some indicators around his own family and how they dealt with opposition, and maybe he didn't have the skill set to deal with whatever was happening to him in terms of the opposition. And I want to go down here and look at this again in terms of his transition, this 23. 23 is about competition. And I'm beginning to think that Dr. Sebi was a little naive and didn't necessarily realize that he was in the lion's den with the work that he was doing. Not only from, quote unquote, the people who big pharma, the medical field, people in the medical field and so forth, but just the people around him. There's oftentimes infiltrators and people around him who are in opposition to him. And opposition could range from the way he does it, the way, how he speaks to people, how he has the program set up. They may be in opposition to that. So it's very difficult when you are not aware, when you're naive and you feel like you're doing something for for the good of humanity, and yet there's these forces out there that are against you. When I looked at the nature of the actual cause of his departure from physicality, gradual progress again, that's telling me that there was something going on for a while. And it just harkens back to that 57 that I got earlier. But the nature of his, where was I? The nature of the actual cause of his departure from physicality. We're looking at gradual progress. We're looking at the wanderer. Now, I could say it this way, that through the process of him being incarcerated, apprehended, incarcerated, that he wandered into that situation, and or some type of germ, bacteria, virus, or whatever found its way into his body, and as a result it caused him to because see, you have this top line of 56, so it caused a lot of damage. Okay, now it goes into moderation, and I want to say this, that sometimes when we extend ourselves too much, that we'll get the 15th hexagram, because we're overextending. We're putting too much out into the physical world and not enough into the spirit world, you see. I was curious about this Pablo Medina Gamboa person. So I wanted to know what his intentions were. Did he have anything to do with the bringing in the money? Or was there some other kind of plot going on? And the nature of Dr. Sebi's, of the conduct of the companion, I got obstacles, limitations, and then we have 44 again. Okay, and we got the gathering together. So, and then we have revolution, and we have the unexpected. So I'm thinking that on some levels, this guy probably was coming in with Dr. Sebi to get some kind of health assistance. 39 is definitely talks about how in your mind, the obstacle are in your mind, and you can perceive them to such a degree that you end up having some type of illness and or limitations in your mobility, limitations in the way that you live your life, because you're not well. This gathering together tells me that he wanted to be a part of it, but he was a little bit nervous too. This 44 tells me that he was a little bit nervous too. Now, he may have been nervous about the regiment that Dr. Sebi offered, and it may have been a little bit revolutionary for him, and maybe on some levels he wasn't able to take the whole revolution to the full extent. This top line of 6 says he'll make a change, but not a major one. Okay, so now how did Dr. Sebi's traveling companion contribute to his arrest? And this was very interesting. Reform. Now, I'm looking at reform, and reform is where you have to switch, you have to change up. You can't continue to do the same thing that you've been doing. But this is also legal. This has to do with the penal system. So I'm curious about this guy here. We're all looking and wondering, but it might be that this guy right here has something to do with Dr. Sebi getting arrested. He may very well have had something to do with it. Now, when you see this subordinate right here, now we might have the Manchurian Candidate or the Patsy or whatever, because that's the sense that I'm getting here. Dr. Sebi was about revolutionizing the health, people's health and all, and having people adapt to a different lifestyle, a different health and wealth. Well, I'm not saying health and wealth, but health in terms of the wealth of your body being healthy that's the best wealth in the world. And so we got this subordinate here. This guy here, is he a patsy? Was he supposed to go down along with Dr. Sebi? Was he receptive to taking that role? I'm wondering about that, you know. I'm wondering about that. I'm wondering about this Pablo. And I was like, okay, I have already asked 4,000 questions. I can't seem, I just don't want to ask anymore. So, if anybody wants to take that a little bit further and looking into this Pablo guy and seeing what his intentions were in terms of working and coming across the ocean with Baba, and see if he had anything at all to do with Baba being incarcerated for money laundering. Okay. I may have. Now here we have, like, I think I went over this already about the money laundering and where he was in terms of the money laundering. So I'm not getting a sense that was his perception, his perspective on it. And I don't see my question about his integrity. I guess I may not have written it down, or I might have wrote it in another place. But from what I can remember, that he was not in the mindset, I mean, of trying to create, to break the law and stuff. He may very well have been just trying to rebuild his business and having received enough income from the products and so forth, and his journeys and his travel, that he was able to acquire a certain amount. It may have been donated to him. Who knows? Okay. So all in all, looking at these readings, I just want to say that basically what I'm getting out of this is that, number one, Dr. Sebi wants us to know that there was something going against him, that there were energies out there that were attempting to oppose his work and bring his work into decline. And at this point in his life, he made transition. He was ready to go. It was time. It was time. The battle, he didn't want to fight this battle. He didn't want to be a part of this battle. He wanted to go and move forward. So he retreated from that. Okay. Dr. Sebi's health was not the best. For those of you who wanted to say that, he was not in the best of health. And he was probably emotionally drained, psychically drained, physically drained, and having him go into prison, having him arrested, and having him be imprisoned and there for 2 months without access to what he's accustomed to, can very well cause him to succumb to some type of virus or what have you. One of the things I did ask about was him being poisoned, and I'm trying to see if that's there. The notion that I wanted to just go back to this. The notion that he was poisoned while in detention in Honduras. And the hexagram 27, the first line changing into 23. I get a feeling from this reading here. This first line says, you throw your magic tortoise away. So I'm thinking that Dr. Sebi made a detour from what he normally does. And in making that detour, he got himself into a place where he ended up not coming out of that too well. The magic tortoise in China, the magic tortoise is like your powers, your abilities, your magic, And instead of And so in this line, instead of admiring and respecting and honoring what you have, you throw it away because you think what you have is not good enough. And I'm wondering if on some level Dr. Sebi began to doubt his own medicine. He's got all of this talent going on, all of this awareness going on. His family is there, 37 is family. But he started to pay attention to some small minor detail, and then that became bigger than life for him. Well, I shouldn't say bigger than life, because that's a whole nother hexagram, but this is abundance right here. And abundance means that there was a lot. So maybe, I'm thinking that because his family was not able to get to him in the manner in which they would have liked, there was something holding them back from getting to him or providing him what he needed. So Dr. Sebi just went with what was available to him. Maybe he was just hungry and he ate something that didn't agree with him. Maybe it was just some little thing that just did not agree with him and caused him to have a cleansing. You know how you eat something and you start to cleanse and your body starts to have a reaction to it because you're not supposed to put that in there. And he started to have a cleansing. And the splitting apart could also mean that it was starting to he was starting to go into a cleansing. And in doing so, he caused himself to be in a not he compromised his immune system, but I'm still not getting that. Like, this doesn't sound to me like he was poisoned. This sounds to me like he made a detour from what he typically does, or he looked elsewhere for assistance or nourishment. And it may have been he was at a state of mind or body and spirit where he just felt like he had to do something. Like I said, he just may have been hungry. Maybe he didn't eat at first while he was there. 2 months, maybe he didn't eat at first. But then after a while, he had to eat something or drink something, nourishment. He had to get some kind of nourishment, and after a while, as a result of that, he got sick. So anyway, Dr. Sebi is like, keep the hope alive. The opposition is definitely there. It's trying to make the whole situation into a decline, bringing its health and wellness into a decline rather than into a increase. That it was time for him to go. This 50 right here. It was time. So he split and he retreated into the astral plane. Now, what I do with these hexagrams sometimes is I rather than going deeply into the esoteric aspect of it, and I don't know if that's what I really want to say, but sometimes I just kind of wrap it up rather quickly because I know what these hexagrams mean, so I can go to them and kind of give you a capsule of what the hexagrams are saying and in relation to one another. Overall, we're looking at opposition. We're looking at stagnation. We're looking at gentle penetration. We're looking at temptation through the 44th hexagram coming to meet. Temptation. We're looking at a little thing going inside of the body or inside of the mind, inside the spirit, and becoming bigger and bigger and more controlling over the way that you feel and think. We're looking at 29, abysmal water, where there was little or no clarity. We're looking at 9, where the family was being held up and being prevented from getting to him. They want, and also in terms of them wanting to share with the community, they weren't able to do that. Maybe they, for whatever reason, they were not able to pull that off. This, the stagnation is there. So maybe there's some issues around the whole family and their ability to come together and make a determination. Maybe that family is not functioning as closely as it should be. But we're looking at all of that. And we're looking at 58. 58. It's supposed to be about inner joy. We're looking at 47, oppression, depression. We're looking at deliverance. You know, I mean, once we leave this body, that's a deliverance. The soul is like, yay, I'm out of here. You know, we're looking at treading, taking a risk. And I would say again that in Baba's, I call him Baba, in his naivete, he just wasn't ready. He just didn't have the resources, the mental, you know, he just didn't have that peace to kind of guide him through being incarcerated. You know, just having the legalese, as it were, to even understand what was happening to him. And I don't think from what we have here that he was conscious of money laundering. You know, that was a charge that came upon him based on where they were coming from, especially with this 29, but that is not where he was coming from. Okay, folks, I'm going to wrap this up. It's long enough, and I want to thank you all for staying with me throughout this as I try to explain. I want to do something on Hillary Clinton's health, because what happens for me is that I hear all this supposition, and people just, they want to do their, what do you call it, they're investigating, but they investigate what other people investigated, what other people investigated, and what other people investigated, and they pull it all together to come up with a story. And to me, the best way to find out the truth of the matter is to use divination. Divination moves it all out the way, releases all the speculation. It's like, you know, this is what went down. Hello, goodbye, you know. So basically, thank you for going through this with me. I hope you learned something about the Oracle system. Hope you learned something about Dr. Sebi. And I hope that we all can learn a big lesson about how we should live our lives. And allow his legacy to continue, but also to be conscientious about what we're doing, so that we do not go under attack, or we're not opposed as we try to live healthier lives. Dr. Sebi said he lives through us all, so through us we will be able to express, learn, teach, and educate one another about how to heal ourselves, and definitely make sure that we don't become so mono-focused on one individual that we lose all sense of our own abilities and powers and strengths. Okay, so thank you again, and I'll see you next video. Peace and blessings to you, your family, and loved ones.